Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I am your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got John Smalley on the podcast. He is the founder of JSG, which is the John Smalley Group, which is a holding company where he is a serial entrepreneur. He buys businesses, sells businesses, invests in businesses, helps startup entrepreneurs. And he's got a very cool thesis that he walks through of how he evaluates different types of businesses across a number of industries. So if you're an investor, a business owner, an entrepreneur, or a wannabe entrepreneur, I think you'll get a lot out of this episode. So let's get John on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, John, good to see you. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I've gotten a chance to know you over the last few years, but why don't you start everybody off, give us a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Who I am, where I am, and what I'm up to right now. All right. Well, who I am, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. Those are probably two more important things. But from a business, standpoint, which I think is where your audience would care, I'm the managing partner of JSG. JSG is a holdco that has roughly 15 companies underneath it as what we call opcos, so 15 different operating businesses. Each one of those businesses operates in a different way. We have core thesis to our investment strategy that I can explain later if you want to hear more about. But so I'm the managing partner for that. Spend most of my time dealing with looking at companies that are between $1 million and $3 million in revenue and figuring out if we want to partner with them and help them scale and grow. We do a lot with startups within our own portfolio, which is currently around 15 companies. We look for synergies between the companies and opportunities to create startups. We also have in multiple incubators where people will come to us because of our track record and ask us to help them take an idea to actual fruition. The companies are in multiple industries, Justin. We're in environmental science. We're in venture capital. We are in software, hardware. We are in wellness. We are in pest control. We're in recruiting, and we've just got our hands in a lot of different places. So again, It goes back to our thesis. So a little bit all over the place. I live in Tucson, Arizona, if you want to physically know where I live, but our businesses are all over the country, all over the world.
Awesome. Well, I know there's a lot to unpack there because I do want to kind of unpack JSG a bit more and learn about the thesis. But I kind of find our stories are intertwined very early in your career. We worked for sister companies. You were at Maxim Healthcare, and I was with a sister staffing firm, Aerotech. So I'm just kind of curious because you did a lot with Maxim, right? And so obviously that is a very, very large organization. You helped grow it. And I'm curious to learn about how that working for a big company, has that helped or hurt you as you've been the serial entrepreneur and and then I'd love to kind of learn about that first venture that you started, bought, invested in, because obviously now that you have 15 plus companies, I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons, but I'm kind of curious how I always like to know people's kind of origin story, if you will.
Yeah, sure. I love it when people ask me like, do you think it's helped you or hurt you? I do think legitimately it's a good question. I have a birthday that's on Christmas Eve, right? And so people are always like, ooh, how's that feel? I don't know, man. It's the only birthday I've ever had, right?
Right.
I think like I'm very fond of my path because it's worked out. I'm very excited to like share that path with people and help them down that path. So I'll talk a lot about that today, but it's not the only path. But for me, I came out of college. I had a degree in business management. I had another one, international business. Went to University of Amsterdam for that. And I know a lot of people come out today and they don't use their degrees, but I've used it from day one. I've used my degrees. And so I worked for a company called Abercrombie & Fitch. You probably still wear their clothes. So I worked for them, and they didn't pay anything, man, but it was big corporate America, and they were considered like a top 10 opportunity for new grads. And the lessons that I learned there were so much more valuable, Justin, than the amount of money I was ever going to make there. I mean, everything was done a certain way. If you remember, if you walk into Abercrombie or Hollister, it smells a certain way, it looks a certain way. You know, the music sounds, the lighting's the exact same way, and really learned like the value of consistency there. We use the saying a lot now in Bold Horizons, the workforce management group, that without consistency, there can be no quality. And I learned a lot about driving consistency in order to achieve certain levels of quality. And then also learned a lot about managing people because I was working with a lot of 17, 18, and 19-year-old kids. And that's not always the easiest thing in the world to do. So then I move into Maxim Healthcare, booming company, looking for younger people that are just interested in working 65, 70 hours a week. You know this because the sister company that you worked for had a lot of the same culture. Work hard, play hard. And if you're talented and you show up every single day and you're willing to learn and you're willing to grind, there's an opportunity for you. And so I took that opportunity. I started off entry level. I ended up overseeing most of the operations at some point in time for the staffing side, and then even the home care side down the road, as well as other divisions within the company. But your question was like, was it valuable? Absolutely, man. I mean, the amount of education and mentorship that I got there over the 13 years, it dramatically minimize my learning curve as far as being an entrepreneur. They are two different worlds. Big corporate America is where a lot of entrepreneurs should or would normally strive to have their company get. And so when you come out of that environment, you kind of know what you're aiming for. You know what you're trying to build. And then you realize pretty quickly that you don't have any of those resources that you took for granted while you were there. So you got to bootstrap it and you got to figure out things on your own. But I would say that Maxim's very, very responsible for who I am today, not only as a person, as a businessman, but also as an entrepreneur and an investor. To this day, I still talk to a lot of those guys openly. I would give 99% of them a job if they needed one. The culture there is still strong. And a lot of the things that I wanted to build in my companies going forward was geared around what I learned and what I was part of at Maxim Healthcare. So yeah, man, I would actually highly advise for anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, especially if you know the industry that you want to be in, you're a entrepreneur, successful one in recruiting, like go work for a big recruiting company. Yeah. Like let them pay for your learning curve, let them educate you, let them show you how things are done at the level that you want to strive to get to once you start your own company. Because it's an amazing experience and it'll absolutely minimize your chances of failure and maximizes your chances of success. As you know, I think like 90% of all small businesses fail. Yeah. So yeah, I would give that advice to my boys one day if they ever asked for it. And I would give it to anybody else that was interested in hearing the story and the why behind it.
Love it. Let's pivot into kind of the startup entrepreneur investor that is John Smalley. So talk about kind of leaving Maxim. I don't remember the story of why you left or how you left. And did you jump right into your first venture? Like how did that kind of going from big corporate to, being an entrepreneur investor, how did that transition happen?
Yeah, well, the why I left is a long story. So we'll have to have another podcast on that. But, ultimately the company was being bought out or was in the process of being bought out. I'd always had this kind of desire to go try and bet on myself. I'm a big believer in like bet on yourself. I had this weird vision, Justin, of one day like laying on my deathbed and like literally thinking like, John, you've created this really nice, call it middle class, upper middle class life for yourself at corporate America, but you never bet on yourself. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of success in corporate America. I always moved up relatively fast. And I made a lot of other people a lot of money. So at some point, I just knew I was going to have to test the waters. Probably contrary to what people at Maxim would want to hear, I started my first business while I was at Maxim. I was in charge of basically taking over the worst territories and fixing them up and deciding if we were going to shut them down or repurpose them or let them go and try to get them to grow to the point where the company wanted them to be. And I realized pretty quickly that those skill sets were universal. I actually had a friend of mine ask me if I could help him with his company. His issue was not cash flow. He had plenty of cash. He lacked strategy, and I was able to work with him. And he was an influential guy in town. We helped this company grow quite a bit. He paid me for that, and that was the beginning of my career as a consultant. So the first company I recruited was a company called Bold Horizons, which now does multiple things. And I no longer directly consult. I do actually have a couple of partnerships that I'm still part of, but we now hire in consultants. I believe I've hired in you in the past to come in and help us execute on investments and projects that we're looking at taking part of. So that was the first one. While I was still at Maxim, and again, it'd be interesting to see if anybody at that company watches this podcast.
Luckily, that was a while ago.
Yeah, right. Sorry, guys. But I also jumped into the wellness industry. I had a guy at the gym who's now one of my best friends. His name's Rob Tatum. Crazy smart. And we used to always argue with each other at the gym about like politics and the world and all that stuff. But he was smart. And I used to always listen to what he had to say and then go home and think about what he had said. Anyways, he knew I was in healthcare. He said, hey, we're interested in this healthcare. I know you're in healthcare. Well, I was in traditional. And everything that he was in is what we call progressive care or wellness. So longevity. And I just knew based off of the experience I had at Maxim with all the hospitals and the insurance companies that Western medicine provided amazing, resources and results and opportunities for people, but it lacked a lot of like new medicine, progressive medicine. And I also noticed that a lot of my friends who were making good money were looking for opportunities that were not available from a healthcare standpoint, from your traditional PCP, primary care physician, doctor, et cetera. So we started that. And while I was at Maxim, I watched both of those take off. So to be fair, when I left, I had already had 2 businesses in the mix. I had an opportunity to start another one literally the day that I left Maxim, which was a pest control company that we scaled into a regional player and a pretty good opportunity. So yeah, I saw what was going to happen, and I went ahead and utilized my time at corporate America to let me get somewhat down that path. And I'm proud to say that I did that not at the sacrifice of corporate America. I'm not suggesting that people do that, but I do think if you're willing to put in the extra, if you're willing to work 65, 70 hours a week for a year, you can move something forward while still receiving your paycheck and performing a good service for the company you work for.
Yeah. And most companies don't necessarily care what you do outside of work as long as you're not directly competing against them, right? Like you can be in recruiting or be in pharma or whatever and start a real estate business or a pest control business. As long as you're not leveraging their resources and obviously competing, it's, let them pay for your education. Let them pay for the first few months that it kind of takes to really get things off the ground.
So let me, can I elaborate on that for a second? So you said most companies don't really care. I would say it's the opposite. I'd say most of them really do care. They got very paranoid when they started figuring out about these other ventures because they looked at it as 1 foot out, or he's not giving us all that he has. And it wasn't everybody, but it was some people. What I would say is that there's very few ways to show an employee that you care about them more than to say, hey, Justin, if you show up every day and you bust your ass and you do a good job here, not only am I okay with you trying something else on your own, if that's where you're going to end up regardless, but I'll support it. And I would say that if you go into the companies that I still have and you ask the employees, I'm working on opportunities outside of that company with other employees, right? So you go from being my employee in one company to actually my potential business partner in a new opportunity.
Yeah.
And for the few of us, man, that are entrepreneurs that want to go through that process, which is, a rigorous process sometimes, like, you're not going to stop somebody from doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you might as well encourage it and then be a supporter of them. And when you do that, what I've seen is that you get their best performance as well. There's a lot of buy-in and loyalty.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely well said. I think, they probably do care, but it's more of a, like I've been in situations and I've talked to people that have been in situations where it's more, they're very restrictive in what they can do, but they can't really tell you can't. And so because they don't own you for, anything outside of what they're paying you. But it's just kind of interesting. I think that some people think that they kind of have to toe the line the entire time. It's like you can be a great employee and then also build a side hustle. I mean, that's not against the rules necessarily. So, but I want to kind of go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think those golden handcuffs, I think they're taught to do that, you kind of want to get somebody into a spot where they can't afford to leave. And that culture, it sounds like it's the right thing to do and it feels like it's the right thing to do, but short term, it may even be the right thing to do, but long term, you're going to lose that person regardless. And you're going to mentally lose them, Justin, months before you physically lose them. So why not just support people's ambitions, right? And for everyone who wants to leave, figure out the one who wants to be an entrepreneur. Figure out the one who wants to have an entrepreneurial spirit, but wants to do it within your organization because they don't want to take the risk They don't want to go through the setup. They don't want to have the sleepless nights, because those people are also crazy valuable.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's kind of fast forward a little bit. You talked a little in the beginning about your core thesis, and I'm assuming that wasn't something that you built overnight. I'm assuming there was probably some trials and fits and starts to kind of get to this core thesis. So maybe talk through it, and then how do you leverage it when you're looking at businesses to buy, invest in, start? Let's kind of walk through that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's Sir Isaac Newton who coined the phrase, like, I've never seen further than when I stand on the shoulders of giants.
Mm.
And I've always been keenly aware of people who do things that I wanted to do, or people who have things that I wanted to have. So to be perfectly honest, the thesis was largely created prior to going off on my own the first time. And I had talked to a bunch of my friends who were in private equity, who had multiple businesses. I always kind of knew that I probably wasn't going to have one business, that I wanted to have a bunch of businesses. And so I just went out and studied these people, and I figured out ways to weasel my way into their network. And then I started talking to them, and then I just told them, like, I'd like to learn from you. Can you walk me through, like, what makes you successful? And via those conversations, Justin, I came up with what we still consider our 4 pillars today, which is our core thesis. And we've evolved past it. Maybe that's what you were alluding to a second ago. And we've gotten deeper into it. So it means a lot more now than it meant on company number 1. But the 4 pillars we go off of, I believe every entrepreneur should look for 3 out of 4 of these, if not all 4 out of the 4 of these, in any venture they want to go down. First one is margin. Like, this concept of, if you work every day and you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's great until you don't have enough money to buy food or pay the electric bill or put gas in your car, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is, the second thing that we look at is it recession proof? So margin, first thing, do what you love, but make money doing it. And you're going to want margins, because if you want to grow and scale your company, every dollar you make doesn't go into your pocket. Every dollar you make goes into somebody else's pocket, because you're hiring them on to grow and scale your company. And then way down the road, you start keeping those dollars. So margin, first and foremost. Second one is recession proof. I could show you the math. Every 6 years, roughly, there's some sense of a recession. And sometimes it's like 2008 and you know that it was a recession. And sometimes it's probably like 2014 where there was a recession, but it just may not have been in 2008. But there's something that happens every 6 years. And there's a lot of, like, geopolitics that goes into that, and macroeconomics and even microeconomics that goes into that. And we can explain to you why. But I don't want any business that's temperamental to that, right? I made a ton of money during COVID because they had the PPP loans that were going out to people. Every one of my businesses was recession proof, because we won't start a business or invest in a business unless it is, right? Yep. And recession proof, by the way, doesn't mean the recession doesn't have any impact. It just means that it won't put your company out of business.
Right.
So everybody else was going out of business, and all the JSG companies that were built on this concept of having margin and being recession proof were getting a bunch of free money from the government to stay open. We were going to stay open anyways. So we just simply said, look, everybody's got a 3-year plan. Start getting to year 3, because we've got this, not that COVID was fortunate, but we've got this fortunate business time where the government's giving out a ton of free money. We're going to utilize it. We're going to move our company forward while everybody else is trying to figure out if they're going to keep the lights on or go back to work. Yeah. Right. So that just shows you how the thesis works. Third one, reoccurring revenue. You're in the recruiting world, so I think you do have some reoccurring revenue, but I think you also have a lot of eat what you kill. Yep. And that's that feast or famine, and that's no way to live a comfortable life. When the pest control world or the wellness world, when you wake up and it's May 1st and you've got enough money coming in to pay everybody and make a little profit, and everything else that comes in above and beyond is money that you can reinvest or keep. That's a really good life. Also, if you're going to sell your company, and we do, we sold 6 companies, I think, in the last year, but then, as well, I think, from your investment portfolio, that those companies usually go for 2 or 3x more than companies that don't have reoccurring revenue. So margin, recession proof, reoccurring revenue. The fourth one, this is the magic pill. Your guys should use this, is innovation in industries that would reward it, but do not require it. Right. And so if you got to say that sometimes, like 2 or 3 times, or slow. Innovation in industries that would reward it, but not require it. This phone requires it. If Apple doesn't continuously update their iOS, they will go out of business. Samsung will eventually put them out of business, right? Or whoever's going to come in to play, right? Pest control, which is one of the first industries I got into, they don't. People have been buying pest control for the same way for 70 years. It doesn't mean that they didn't want something different. Most people I talked to wanted something that involved less chemical. It was more proactive. It was more environmentally friendly, right? But they weren't requiring it. However, the second I brought it to the market, people decided that, yeah, they would switch. And in those industries, which we call sleepy industries, you don't go to bed at night thinking you're going to wake up in the morning and be replaced. These guys go to bed at night wondering what's going to happen overnight, right? And so if you can drive innovation, Justin, in those industries, it's a great way to capture market share. And if you already have margin and you already have it's recession proof and you already have recurring business or revenues, and then you can grab market share. We're 16 for 16. So like that works. And I would encourage your listeners to have their own thesis or just steal mine.
Yeah, no, I remember you telling me about the thesis a while ago, and I remember the innovation in industries that reward it but don't require it. And I'm curious, just with your pest control company, what were some of the pieces or technology that you introduced that others weren't or couldn't? Just because it could be, is it big things or is it small things? Like what? Maybe kind of share a little of an example.
Well, I think there are big things, but I don't think it has to be that way. In traditional pest control, I owned 4 traditional pest control companies and then 2 environmental science companies. Those are products, right? And so I'll give you an example. I came out of healthcare. Everything at the time was about aggregating data. This was before AI was everywhere. And we were trying to say, look, we have all this data, but we don't know what it means because it all lives in different spaces and nobody's like looking at it all together. And when you look at the total map versus just the different data points, it tells a different story, right? And so that was the big thing in whatever year that was coming out of healthcare, probably 14 years ago. And so they were talking about how do you do it? How do you predict outcomes? How do you know if somebody has this, and this, that this is going to happen? So then I get into pest control. And I'm talking to an industry leader and I'm saying, you literally service like 7 of the 10 homes on my street.
Yeah.
You guys dominate. Why? Well, we love density. Density reduces drive time. Okay, cool. Makes it more profitable. I get it. Right. But you guys are saying you're environmentally friendly. You come out to my house, you do your service, then you write down the notes on a piece of paper and then you stick it in my door and that paper ends up in my front yard. So your chemicals may be environmentally friendly, but your piece of paper floating around my yard is not environmentally friendly. And I just asked him, I said, why would we not use iPads? Right? Like, let's get rid of paper. Not to mention the fact we got to store these things for like 7 years.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're paying somebody else to store it. And I said, on top of that, if we were using iPads, wouldn't you be able to tell that if I was treating my house for crickets and it was May and I was treating Justin's house for crickets and it was May, that Susan's house who's next to me that I don't have, she probably has a cricket problem, especially if we're doing a good job. Right.
Right.
And if we have enough information to say that for whatever reason, the weather pattern is driving an abundance of crickets, we know that if you have a cricket problem in May and you live in Tucson, Arizona, you're going to have a scorpion problem in July. Why? Because scorpions eat crickets, right? And so it's basic science. So now what if I go to Susan and I say, Susan, I don't have you. I'd love to take care of you. Everybody in your neighborhood that has a cricket problem that we're fixing for them right now. And just a heads up, you're going to have a scorpion problem in July. If your pest control company hasn't talked to you about it, you probably want to get ahead of it. If you get ahead of it now, we can do it without a bunch of pesticides. Yeah. Right. And if you want us to do it, we're happy to do it for you. So you start doing that. And next thing you know, Susan's like, why is my guy not telling me this? Right. And so that's just an example, Justin, like where we basically said less paper, less chemical, better proactive solutions, and higher rates. We charge that customer more. Yeah. That customer would pay more. I would pay more to have less chemical and better outcomes. Right. So there's a lot more that goes into that, but that's just an example of an industry that wasn't requiring it, but would reward it. And when you get into the commodity side of businesses, you're a recruiter. Other people recruit. the way you treat the customer and the experience that you create for the vendor, it better be different, because that's the only way for you to take market share.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about, you have 15 companies under JSG. You've sold 6 of them in the last year. I'm very curious about time management, right? I guess, what's the typical structure? You don't need to give away all the details, but are you owning all these 100% of these companies? Or are you bringing in partners, and so you own a smaller share? Let's talk
Yeah.
just about kind of the structure, and then just how do you manage that many companies on a regular basis?
Yeah. So first of all, like, I'll share just about any detail that somebody wants to listen to. I'm the beneficiary, Justin, of some amazing, amazing people who stepped in and helped me out when it didn't offer any immediate upside for them. And what I've come to figure out over my business career is that there's nothing more profitable than doing the right thing. And I can't tell you how much money I've made by helping people out with no intentions of ever getting anything back, only to see it come full circle. Right. I mentioned the incubators that we have. That's me helping other people out, and other people being like, oh my gosh, I know the guy for you, as they talk to other people who are going through their experience or having their problems. Right. So happy to share. It does come full circle. I'm happy to share, even if it never comes full circle. Okay. Go back to your question. Your question was what? Remind me.
Just about the structure of some of the deals that you do, just because I'm curious, like, if you own 100% of 15 companies, that's a lot of board meetings and all that fun stuff, versus if you own, 10 or 15% of a bunch of companies, then you're more of a LP and all that fun stuff. And then, just how do you manage all of it?
All right. Well, let's talk early on, because the way I manage the first and develop the first 5 is different than the remaining. So, and by the way, I own 9 companies right now because we sold off 6, but we have a handful of new companies that are always coming in. This last year, based off of what we saw coming down the pipeline with AI and private equity, we just decided to offload in one of the sectors specifically. So early on, didn't have a lot of money to go fund these things myself. So we did what's called OPM, other people's money. Mm-hmm. And in order to get other people to put money into it, I had to have conversations with them saying that I was a $300,000 executive, and I will run your company for you for $50,000 a year. So if you invest in this company, I'm CEO, I'm president, I'm going to make sure that these things happen. I'm going to work 60 hours a week. I'm going to stuff mailboxes, whatever's necessary. Justin, your investment is protected because you will have me until you get paid back. Right. So early on, I had to. Obviously, you run into a capacity issue at that point in time. Right. And so I had to pivot. And as I started making people money, those people who gave me money in the first place were also quite willing to reinvest in my next venture, So you have to have some level of success, which I think is correlated to the thesis, a little bit of luck, and a lot of hard work. And so I joined a group called Strategic Coach. You're familiar with it. Probably 3 years ago now, 3 years ago. And at that point in time, I had 7 or 8 companies. And Strategic Coach is all about creating self-managing companies. And I knew that while I was obsessed with winning and growing things and developing things, like, it couldn't lead to what we call entrepreneurial poverty, which is this concept of, I actually have more money than I've ever had. I have got more success than I've ever had, but I may as well be poor because I haven't gone on a date with my wife. I haven't seen my kids in 2 weeks. I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. Like, you might as well be poor. That's how poor people live. So I became very conscious around putting together a strategy and a plan that would allow me to start to work my way out of these businesses. What I thought I realized was that I was going to have to take a major financial hit in order to afford somebody to come in and replace me, right? But when I got somebody to come in, I got 100% of my time back. And what I didn't anticipate was how fast I would actually make that money back. I also didn't realize at the time how much more valuable that made my companies. Because they were growing exponentially. They had more people overseeing more things, doing better things. And then simultaneously, I wasn't part of the company. So out of those companies that I've sold, like, I wasn't part of those. And as you know, again, I think from an investor standpoint, we pay the most for those companies, right? It's the company that has a CEO or a president that works 60 hours a week and everything hinges on him or her. Those guys get screwed on the valuations. It's the opposite side that don't. So I was doing it for multiple reasons, but Strategic Coach gave me a lot of the map that I needed to not just do that for one company, but to do that for all companies. I was also part of Vistage prior to that, another CEO advisory board group. So these are all self-development things that I put a lot of money into so that I could transition from, hey, other people's money to, hey, I got my own money and I'm now paying other people and giving other potential CEOs the opportunity to become entrepreneurs through their hard work, through their success.
Yeah. I'm curious about sometimes I talk to entrepreneurs and that they almost have a little bit of a identity crisis when they think about selling or when they leave their business because that's been their baby forever. They built it or they bought it very early on and they grew it. And then when they leave it, they kind of just don't know what to do. Their identity was, I'm the founder of, or I'm the CEO of XYZ company. Did you run into any of that when you started to kind of transition out where people weren't coming to you with all their problems and questions, which maybe that made you feel good or bad? I don't know. I'm just kind of curious kind of how that worked.
I'd love to tell you this whole sob story about, how much it meant. No, man, the best feeling in the world is taking a big ass check, Justin. And you can be conscious. You probably should be conscious of who you sell to. And it doesn't mean I didn't have those little feelings. I still see trucks drive around and my kids are like, Dad, that's your truck. It's like, no, it's not my truck anymore. So there is some of those things and you can be proud, but I take a lot of pride in building companies that can be sold for significantly more than they were worth when I got into them. The other thing is that I do different than a lot of people is I'm not tied to any industry or one business, right? People like sports, people like food, they like culture. I like business, man. I don't give a shit what the opportunity is. If there is margin, if there is, if it's recession proof, if it hits those pillars, and especially now, if I can put myself around other really good people and challenge the status quo, the fourth pillar I mentioned earlier, I'm going to do it. Right? So I had other companies to go to. I had other companies, as soon as I would sell one, I would start 2 new ones or invest in 2 new ones. So I never had like a lack of purpose or identity because it's tied to a bigger portfolio. But also, all that being said, I'm more focused on being a good human being. And a big part of that for me is being a good dad. And I've got a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old boy. And the need and desire to spend time with them when they are 10 and 7 is more important to me right now than it was 5 years ago. And it's more important that I spend that time with them right now than it will be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right. So like my kids aren't going to pause. My wife's not going to pause for me to be a good husband as I grind to grow additional revenues or worth that I likely will never spend. And that doesn't mean I'm not making money. It doesn't mean all that stuff, but it means I'm not tied to any one business. I'm tied to being a good person, creating value, not just for the business, but for the people who work for it, and then creating opportunities for other people and doing it over and over again with the freedom of time, the freedom of money, the freedom of purpose, and the freedom of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it. How do you kind of come across all these deals? I mean, obviously it probably is easier now because you have a track record and people know you as this entrepreneur, this investor. But early on, it seems like you just kind of forced your way or found your way into rooms that you could, like you said before, kind of work with people that are more successful and kind of are where you want to get to. So how do you find the deals? How do they come to you? And then other than the thesis, do you have other vetting processes that you go through?
Well, I find the deals. I've always tried to pride myself on 2 things, and that's being self-aware and then self-development. So I think I'm fairly self-aware, like maybe borderline paranoid self-aware of how other people see me or what's going on or what's not going on. And then I put a lot of time into self-development, as in like, this is an area that I'm not good at. I need to get better at. And when you do those things, you're naturally going to surround yourself with other people who are also doing those things. And in my opinion, the reason I'm so focused on those 2 things is all of the leaders, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Phil Knight, whoever, who have really done special things, they all excel with those 2 things. Right. Yeah. And so I would say that's part of it. I just started doing things. Like there's this saying that says, if you want to be wealthy, do what wealthy people do. I just started doing things that people who had what I thought I wanted, or, lived the way that I thought I wanted to live were doing. And then, you're right. I had to develop friendships and networks and relationships, but to me, I genuinely like people. So that wasn't hard to do. And I also genuinely like helping people. So I would just go out of my way to help that person first. And again, it seemed to always come back full circle from that. So There's outside of that, with regards to finding new opportunities, there's a couple different ways. Reputation now is what leads to most. People seek us out. We don't do any advertising. We have private equity companies that come to us. We have large investors that come to us. They send us stuff. Can you check it out? Can you tell me if you think it's a good deal? If it is, let's partner on it. People come to us because we've helped them out in the past, and they're looking for help again, either with the same company or another company, or they're trying now to grow and expand their portfolio. So we partner with them at a different life cycle in whatever their professional career is. So we have that. And then when you have that many companies, you can also start to roll up the total P&L.
Yeah.
Right. So an example would be for me, when we started doing recruiting, which I know is what you do. We had, call it 10 or 11 P&Ls, and between them, there was an annual spend of, call it, I don't know, I'm going to make this up, $700,000 in recruiting. And man, we got a ton of value. There's a lot of value in recruiting, like getting the right person. We paid people like you all day long, right? I came from a recruiting background as well. So at some point I started to realize we're doing 700,000 here. I can literally start my own recruiting company, right? And make myself the largest client, and then give somebody an opportunity to go grow it and task them with bringing in some other people. So you start to kind of grow from within simultaneously. And there's been numerous examples of ways that we've done that from one company to another. And if they all share the same thesis, it's not uncommon or hard for us to carry that thesis or culture into the new opportunity.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, as we kind of wind things down here, we have to talk about AI. So I'm curious kind of how you're leveraging it more for yourself as a serial entrepreneur to be able to manage your time better. Like, just kind of give me the high level on how you're using it, and maybe how you've leveraged it in some of your businesses that, to what you said earlier in your kind of pillar 4, that kind of reward the technological improvements versus requiring it.
Yeah. First of all, I'm embracing it. I just choose to see what I think is the inevitable upside of AI. So I'm not a doomsdayer. I don't think it's coming for jobs. It may be, but those jobs will be repurposed. So, but I see the upside in it. I can't wait to see what it does for cancer and diabetes, and for just value for these companies. I love, because I'm really a small business guy now, right? So I love seeing these guys who have worked their butts off but could never compete with the $500 million company being able to compete with them now. And I think it's uniquely qualified to help them, because the $1 billion companies that I've worked for they can't shift. They can't move that fast. So this is a generational, once in a lifetime opportunity for the playing field to be reset and to be made fair for everybody. So I embraced it. I'm looking to see how I can utilize it. I'm looking to see how I can be the key advocate for it in every one of my companies. I'm looking to see how I can learn it faster. I'm looking to see how I can use it within my existing thought process and investment strategy. I love it, man. I really genuinely love it. I'm the first to test something out. For me, I want to be able to have an amazing life, make a ton of money, and make a ton of impact, right? And there's a lot of things that AI can do now on my behalf while I'm out coaching my kids 2 baseball games tonight. Yeah. Right. I'm going to take 4 hours, 4.5, 5 hours out of my schedule, which I do almost every night now, to be with my boys, to do the thing that we love while this is working for me.
Yeah.
How fucking cool is that, man? I mean, like my mom could have never said that. My grandmother would have never said that. My grandfather would have never said it. Like, dude, we live in this amazing opportunity, but the first movers will win. Yeah. So that's my viewpoint on it. I use it everywhere. I'm looking for more places to use it. I'm looking on how to start up companies with it. I'm looking at figuring out ways to scale companies with it. I use it in my personal life. I have my kids using it. It's just something that we're choosing to embrace.
Yeah. No, I love it. Yeah. It's a fascinating tool. And I think if you're putting your head in the sand and thinking it's going to go away, I think you're going to be sorely mistaken very, very quickly. And people are going to blow you away who are competing with you right now. And maybe you don't even know that are competing with you right now. I know that you had 15 businesses, you sold 6. I guess, what's the next kind of 12 months look like for you? Are you looking at buying more, selling more, kind of some of the column A, some of column B?
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to let whatever happens, man. I'm going to continue to grow the businesses we're in. We're getting into some new industries that are really fun. We're actually developing a company called Lyft, which is an AI infrastructure company for the guys and girls who run businesses and know they need to do something but don't know what to do. Like this company comes in and facilitates the process for them. And so I'm trying to solve a problem that I had at once, and I know other people have. I've got an NIL startup called Frame, which is really cool, really going to disrupt the way current NIL is done that I'm part of. I'm getting into different industries based off of relationships that I've made through previous deals. And yeah, like anybody who sees this, it's like, hey, I could use some help. First of all, I don't have to buy your company to help you. I'm interested in just helping people. But yeah, man, no doubt between investing, starting companies, buying companies, probably selling companies again. I'm going to continue to work at whatever level makes me the happiest. And some of that is driven by making money, and some of that is driven by having amazing friends and doing amazing things and being with my family. And I believe that that's all possible.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's a great way to kind of wind things down. But before we get out of here, I got a 3-pack of questions I ask every guest. So first question here is, what's an influential book that you maybe would recommend to the listeners?
Oh, man, I love books, dude. An influential one, though, for the sake of what we've been talking about today, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. I think I even mentioned him earlier. It's his autobiography.
Yeah.
It is entertaining. It is motivating. It is eye-opening. And anybody who is debating on whether or not they have the gall or the stomach to go do their own thing, and it's not meant for everybody, should read that, because it shows you the power of persistence and commitment. And it's really cool. It's an American success story. So
yeah,
I'd highly recommend Shoe Dog by Phil Knight.
Cool. Awesome. Second question here. Favorite thing to do outside of work? And maybe you've already mentioned it with baseball, with coaching your boys.
Yeah, that's it. It's not even close. I enjoy other things, man. I enjoy the other things are not good. I enjoy, happy hours. I enjoy gambling, but the most productive and my favorite thing is developing these young men into good people and baseball players, and being able to use the world of baseball to convey life lessons and opportunities to my boys. I'm not perfect. That's work proves it on a regular basis, but just being able and capable of spending that much time with them in these influential years is an absolute game changer for me.
Yeah, love it. Final question here. Favorite vacation spot?
Oh, man. So that's not my favorite city. That's my favorite vacation spot.
It could be a city. Yeah, it could be a city, but
it probably has to be a city. I'm just saying I'm not sure that it's the same. My favorite city is Amsterdam.
Okay.
And my favorite vacation spot, man, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish, Portugal.
Okay.
Is up there. Maui is up there. Paris, Prague. Dude, I got a lot. And I got a lot of places I want to go. So the one I want to go to next is Croatia.
Okay. Fair enough. I've heard great things about Croatia. I've not been, but I think I definitely want to make it back to Tuscany. I think that's kind of on Alice and I's bucket list.
Yeah. I mean, Rome, there's so many cool spots in Italy. The whole country is cool. What about you? Where's your favorite vacation spot?
I think my favorite is probably Tuscany at the moment, or I like going to London, frankly. I think
London's cool too.
I like London. I've also been there 3 times now, and it's not rained since when I was there, which is very, very rare. So I highly doubt the next time we go, it'll be nice and sunny. But John, man, it's been really cool to kind of get to dig into your story a bit more and share it with the world. If people want to reach out, learn more about what you're doing, if they want to, maybe run a business idea by you, what's the best way to connect with you?
LinkedIn, just find me, John Smalley. Is the easiest way. You can ping me on there. I don't manage my own social media. But if you drop a note and saying that you saw me on this podcast, I can have my team make sure that they flag me. So I don't know, maybe you can throw my LinkedIn profile on the post or whatever, however this comes out.
Yep. Yeah. We'll share the link in the show notes, and so people can reach out pretty easily. So John, man, really appreciate your time. And thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.